Am I the a-hole for not visiting my dad in the hospital after he needed heart surgery? I am a 27-year-old female with 3 sisters, one older, aged 31M, and 2 younger, aged 23C and 16S. Only C and I share the same parents, while my other 2 sisters are my father's children, each with different mothers as well. Before I delve into the main story, I need to provide some background information. Growing up, my mother struggled with alcoholism and also dealt with bipolar disorder. Her addiction peaked when I was between the ages of 11 and 17. Aside from her extreme cruelty towards me, we often faced financial hardships, with utilities like electricity and water being cut off, and frequently having little to no food in the house. We often relied on living with relatives. This situation made me hate living with my mother to the extent that I would cry whenever I had to leave a family member's home. I also acted as the primary caregiver for C during this challenging period. The relationship between my parents was toxic, even after they separated. I lived with my father during 6th grade until my mother showed up unexpectedly and created a scene, after which I returned to live with her until I was 15, when I felt mature enough to choose where I wanted to live. C and I moved back in with our father and S, along with her mother, T. Although this was not an ideal living arrangement, it was an improvement compared to being with my mother. At least we had food, electricity, and running water, and I wasn't enduring the severe emotional abuse I had faced for the past 4 years. I stayed there until I turned 17, at which point T decided to kick me out, and my father did not intervene. I ended up moving in with my aunt and uncle since I was still in school and had nowhere else to go. T chose to hold all my belongings hostage, threatening to call the police if I attempted to retrieve them, so all I had was a laundry basket filled with clothes in my trunk. T also disabled my phone, forcing me to find a solution quickly. As a result, I went low contact or no contact with my father during this time. It truly devastated me to be unable to see S anymore, but given her young age, I felt I had no option. My mother became sober by the end of my high school years, while my father started abusing drugs, and it quickly spiraled out of control. Now, on to recent years. I have maintained a low or no contact relationship with my father since all of this transpired, with minimal outreach from him. There have been several instances over the past few years that deeply hurt me, including his failure to reach out after my maternal grandmother passed away, and his complete disregard for my existence when he showed up at my workplace one day while I was assisting him. I had always been a daddy's girl growing up, so it was painful to feel like I meant so little to him. In the last year, my dog died, and 2 of my cousins passed away in consecutive months. To say I was heartbroken would be an understatement. I had never felt so shattered. I completely shut down, alarming my mother with my level of depression. Since S is older now, I have been working on rebuilding our relationship independently without needing to coordinate with anyone else. For the past 7 or 8 years, she has been living with her maternal grandmother after both my father and her mother transitioned from functioning addicts to full-blown drug users. I have financially supported her as much as possible over the years, providing for school necessities, birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, and general expenses, all because I felt terrible that she had so few people who cared for her or even acknowledged her. She began to act out during her early teenage years, engaging in vaping and conflicts with other girls. She got into several fights over a few months, and this issue was serious enough that I brought it up to my uncle and father, which led to it becoming a significant concern. All of this was occurring around the same time as my cousin's death. My father, once again, failed to reach out to offer any support or condolences for either of these losses. 3 devastating losses, and not a word from him. While I understood that it was unlikely, a small part of me had hoped he might at least send a text, but there was silence. After the 3rd fight, my father asked me if I could take custody of my sister because her grandmother felt overwhelmed and both of her parents were unreliable due to their addiction. Receiving that text broke my heart for multiple reasons. It made me realize that my sister felt like a burden, crying out for acknowledgement from her parents. The truth is, I was already so devastated that I could barely take care of myself. I was living with my mother, had quit one of my 2 jobs, and spent my days working only to return home and cry myself to sleep for months. After discussing it with my mother and uncle, I ultimately decided that, despite my desire to help, I was not in the right state of mind to take on such a responsibility. Following that, I became enraged with my father for placing us in this difficult situation. After not speaking for nearly a decade, he had the audacity to ask so much of me while not taking responsibility for his actions. I ended up sending him a detailed message outlining all the pain he had caused me over the years and how much I had tried to cover for him due to his lack of parenting. I confessed something I had kept to myself for years, that I had concealed his drug use during my high school years, waking up for school and hiding any paraphernalia before my sisters woke up. I listed all the ways I had tried to protect my younger sisters from the chaos, including ensuring they were not home when he and T had violent arguments. I explained how much his absence in my life affected me. However, after pouring my heart out, he never responded, which added to my hurt. The fact that I was not even worth a simple acknowledgement further cemented the pain I had been feeling and was the final straw for me in terms of any hopes for reconciliation. It felt as if I was already facing immense struggles in life, and he chose that moment to strike the match and set everything ablaze. I could not understand why he reached out to me instead of our older sister, who was better equipped to handle such a situation because she was older, had a stable living situation, and held a degree in social work. Since then, I have not heard from him, not that he had been very present in my life at all over the past decade. Fast forward to now, he was admitted to the hospital a few months ago due to multiple health issues. Upon arrival, he tested positive for methamphetamine, fentanyl, PCP, and cocaine. He called C at that time to be his medical proxy because he ended up at the hospital where she worked. C went, and although she bore considerable resentment toward him, she felt compelled to go. However, she struggles with decision-making and became extremely overwhelmed with the situation. She pleaded with me to help her manage everything, but I declined. I explained that I could not handle the stress and needed to distance myself from all the pain he had caused over the years. I felt guilty for leaving her to navigate it on her own, but S is still far too young, and M lives 2 hours away and has never been very involved in our lives. My mother, uncle, and several other family members urged me to visit him as the situation appeared dire, but I simply couldn't bring myself to do so. I should note that I had not set foot in a hospital since my grandmother passed away a few years ago. It turned out that years of drug use combined with poor dietary habits prior to the addiction had taken a toll on his health, leading to diabetes and ultimately requiring heart surgery. When discussing this with a friend, she told me I needed to put aside my struggles and attempt to reconcile because life is short, and if he died, I would regret it. I acknowledged that her point was valid, but I had been mentally preparing for this possibility for years. All of this has made me feel torn between the need to try, just in case, and the justified reluctance to consider any form of relationship with him until he gets sober, as I refuse to endure that pain again. So, am I the antagonist for not reaching out to him over the last 10 years? Story 2. I, 23/F, have been cheated on by my boyfriend, 24/M. This will be a lengthy post. I just want to provide a warning in advance. I genuinely need guidance regarding my situation. I have been with my partner for more than 8 years. We essentially grew up together and have faced nearly everything side by side. We have experienced the loss of friends, battles with cancer, car accidents, and moves name it, we've been through it. Our families have become one large family that has embraced each other as part of their own. 4 years ago, we moved in together as I began my college education. He decided against attending college, opting instead to continue working at his job. I believe this decision led to some resentment, as he covered 90% of our expenses, excluding rent. At the same time, I was making numerous new friends and trying new experiences without him. He also revealed a significant childhood trauma he had been carrying alone. Soon after, he began drinking more and experimenting with marijuana and pills. We had numerous discussions about him seeking professional help. However, he was in denial about his situation for nearly a year before he decided to explore it. He was subsequently diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression. Although medication was prescribed, he only took it for a brief period, claiming it made him feel like a zombie. Our relationship suffered over the next 2 years, yet we always remained supportive of one another. Then I discovered he had met a girl online while gaming, and the two of them had exchanged some messages. He realized how inappropriate that was and quickly ended it. He sat me down and honestly explained the situation. I forgave him, and our conversation was quite friendly, perhaps slightly flirty. Nonetheless, he felt guilty about getting to know someone else without my knowledge. Fast forward to the present. I am currently involved in a clinical rotation an hour and a half away from him. I returned to live with my parents for 6 months to complete my studies and graduate. He decided to move back in with his parents, who are not particularly close to him. He never disclosed his childhood trauma to them and always felt he had to demonstrate his worth to them. During my clinical rotation, we continued to experience challenges. I was essentially working full-time without pay while also trying to complete hours of schoolwork in the evenings. After 4 months of clinicals, one night, he called me while he was at the bar with a friend. I informed him I was going to bed. In the middle of the night, I woke up with a strange feeling after checking my phone, as I had received no messages from him, which was unusual since he typically updated me on his safe return home. I called him the next morning, and he shared a sob story about needing assistance because he was spiraling mentally and thought he was on the verge of becoming an alcoholic and binge drinker. I spent over an hour trying to help him calm down. I eventually drove to his parents' house, about an hour away, because we had plans that day. Upon arrival, he shockingly told me that he kissed someone at the bar. Furious, I left without allowing him to explain. I returned home and informed my parents of everything because my heart was shattered by this betrayal. My family was devastated because they had practically helped raise him, each forming their own personal bond with him. Later that day, I called him for clarification, and it turned out there was more to the story. He went home with this person, and she performed oral sex on him. This shattered my heart. Keep in mind, we had been together since I was 15, and we had shared our virginities. We stopped communicating for a few weeks, but he remained my comfort and the person I had invested my love in for years. We never resumed our relationship, but throughout the year, we made efforts to rebuild what we had lost. He quit drinking cold turkey, distanced himself from those friends, started attending a recovery church, and made meaningful connections there. Honestly, during our 8 years together, that was the first time I felt we had developed such a strong and resilient relationship. We were both maturing and growing as individuals, which positively influenced our revised connection. Now we are up to date. I currently have a full-time job and my own apartment. We have been spending a great deal of time together, and it has been wonderful. Last week, we had a trivial argument over dishes, but it was our first significant disagreement since everything, prompting me to reflect. We had arranged to meet at my parents' house this weekend for dinner. He had some plans with his parents that were postponed, so he opted to come on the day of our plans instead of the night before, which I was fine with. That night, I went to bed early and called him to let him know. I was aware he had started drinking 1 or 2 drinks occasionally when with friends or family, and when I spoke with him that evening, it was clear he had been drinking. Again, I woke up early to find there were no texts or calls. I immediately felt that gut-wrenching sensation. I checked his location and saw he was at an unfamiliar house. He finally took my call around noon, and I could tell he was extremely hungover. I pressed him about his activities, and he admitted he had gone to his friend's house to drink. He knew that behavior would upset me. I was genuinely hurt because we had made significant progress only for him to jeopardize my trust in one night. I had a grim premonition of something worse. This phone call resembled one I had experienced a year prior. He drove to my parents' house so we could discuss things face to face and opened up about spiraling in recent weeks and drinking heavily again, as well as returning to pills. I had no idea about any of this. I was in total disbelief. I looked him directly in the eyes and asked if anything had happened at the party. He adamantly swore nothing occurred with any girls. As we were having this serious conversation about getting him help and medicated, I received a direct message from a girl who had attended the party. She informed me that he and another girl had been together during times when they were alone, and she expressed her anger toward him. He left the party but returned to retrieve his phone. When he went back, everyone else was asleep, and her friend ultimately asked him to go outside to have sex in her car. They indeed had sex in the car. He blatantly lied to my face while being fully aware of the truth. I called him the next day to seek clarity for my own understanding, and he stated that he couldn't confront me with the truth because of how deeply it had hurt me the last time. He claims that during these manic episodes, he fails to process what is happening until it is right in front of him, comparing it to fluctuating between a lucid state. Honestly, I really just need advice from individuals who are not familiar with us. I do not struggle with mental illness, so I have no understanding of what manic episodes entail. We also weren't officially together, but we were making strides toward that goal. The person I know him to be 90% of the time is incredibly thoughtful, caring, and loving. He would go above and beyond for the people he cherishes. That is the person I love, the individual I want to marry, the one I envision as the father of my children. However, the other 10% of him, the part that grapples with unmedicated mental health issues, childhood trauma, and addiction fragments my heart into countless pieces each time. I know I do not deserve this. It is challenging to navigate my feelings regarding this situation. I almost wish he would simply cheat on me when he is fully himself, not under the influence of drugs or alcohol, so I could be sure he made that choice. But he doesn't. He doesn't place himself in those situations when he is mentally stable and not abusing substances. We have been together for 8 years, and no one on this planet understands my soul like he does. Is it time for me to let go of this relationship? Story 3. Did I waste my friend's time? Is this a valid response to making plans? I hope this title is appropriate. I am feeling quite confused, and this is my first time sharing my situation here. I genuinely need some guidance, so here it goes. My best friend, female, 23, and I, female, 23, met in college and have been friends for at least 5 years. 2 years ago, she and her boyfriend, male, 25, relocated to a different state, which was very upsetting for me. However, it was a better option for them, and we, along with her other close friends here, have made the effort to visit each other for birthdays, holidays, and just for fun over these past few years. Her boyfriend and she broke up in 2024, and around September of that year, we discussed the idea of me moving to her state for a few months to participate in a program together. We have often dreamed about vacations and trips, but most of those plans never materialized. This idea, however, did. We began planning to live together and were thrilled at the prospect of spending so much time together, every day doing something we would genuinely enjoy. At one point, we agreed that my boyfriend, male, 23, would either move in with us or travel back and forth between our old state and the new one to maintain his job. In either case, the decision was his, and he would be contributing to rent while he was there, so it was not an issue. As we got closer to significant steps in the process, we started encountering problems with certain living arrangements not meeting one or the other's preferences or requirements. I have a stable job where I currently reside, and since our program will last only 6 months, I plan to return home afterward and continue working. Additionally, I do not want to live in this state unless it is for this program, meaning I was searching for short-term leases and did not want to compromise on that aspect. She already lives there and was more flexible, being interested in long-term options. She conducted an extensive search, but struggled to find a 2-bedroom home or apartment for rent that allowed pets and had a short-term lease. She was eager to find something quickly, while I was willing to wait a bit longer to discover something more affordable. Her parents live nearby, and she has a few reliable relatives who would gladly welcome her should she need to leave her shared home with her ex promptly. Throughout our friendship, we have been aware that our personalities differ significantly. One of the primary reasons we have bonded so well is that she is more type A, while I lean toward type B, which is perfectly fine. We have maintained a strong friendship for many years, and this has never posed an issue. However, when it came to planning our future, our contrasting styles began to cause conflict. She made several remarks indicating that if this arrangement was too overwhelming or not what I wanted, she would be okay with that and would find other housing options. This was despite the fact I never expressed a desire to back out. After much discussion, we made the difficult choice not to live together, but I would still move to her state, and we would participate in the program together. Consequently, I looked for alternative housing arrangements, such as Airbnbs and very short-term leases, and even considered places that would not allow me to bring my cat, who would stay with my parents and likely be happier there. Unfortunately, I could not find anything affordable on my current savings while financing the program. However, I ultimately identified a 2-bedroom apartment at an excellent price that permitted multiple pets and included several bathrooms and a patio. This location is in a good area, although it is a 50-minute commute from the campus we would be attending. It also has significant damage and lacks a washer and dryer hookup, but those issues were manageable for me in the meantime. Although it was an excellent price, it was still unaffordable for me alone, so I asked my boyfriend to move in full-time with me. Her initial plan did not materialize, and she views living with her parents as a last resort. She was presented with the option of staying in her current apartment and negotiating arrangements with her boyfriend. They spoke, and he presented her with a promise ring. They are not dating, but it appears she wants to explore where this might lead. I recognize that I inadvertently placed her in this difficult situation. If I had compromised more, we might already have had a shared place, and he would not have had the chance to attempt to win her back. I aimed to make choices that would suit my circumstances while ensuring she did not feel she had to wait for a more affordable option. Since we made this decision together, I did not fully consider the consequences of the what-ifs, and now that her plans haven't unfolded as she hoped, I feel a sense of responsibility. I am unsure how to process this, and that is not even the primary reason I am writing. Now, on to her birthday. Her birthday and my dad's are in the same month, just a day apart. For the past 2 years, I have visited her to celebrate her birthday, but this year would have marked the third occasion. Due to my upcoming move and my closeness to my family, I wanted to spend this birthday with my dad. I planned to come the weekend before and after her birthday for various reasons, but still intended to see her both times. Here is the reason I am reaching out. A week ago, on Saturday, my boyfriend and I drove to our new state to sign the lease and move a few of our belongings. We intended to stay overnight to settle in and familiarize ourselves with the area. A few days earlier, my friend and I had a phone conversation where she expressed her availability and eagerness to see the new place. Initially, I did not invite her because I foresaw our busy schedule and was uncertain about our timing. I also knew there would be many opportunities after we received the keys for her to come by. However, when she expressed her willingness to visit, I was delighted to have her come on Saturday or Sunday. On the day of our arrival, we took longer than anticipated to get everything organized and acquire the keys. She messaged me to check if we had arrived safely, as rain was expected and she wanted to avoid driving in it. She asked if she could come over. I explained that we had just moved in and were still figuring out our plans for the evening. I suggested she come over for breakfast on Sunday instead, which is a tradition we have always cherished. She then responded with anger, stating that she had been waiting all day and missed her nail appointment and other errands she could have run. If she had known, I would offer to hang out the next day. Additionally, she mentioned she had plans with her ex at 10 a.m. on Sunday, so she would not be able to come over for breakfast anyway. I reassured her that my invitation was merely a suggestion, and I was still happy to have her over that day. She replied again, reiterating her frustration over the above situations, asserting that I chose my boyfriend and others over her. In the end, she did not visit that night. Later, I reached out to invite her over the following day after her plans, explaining we would still be in town until 4 p.m. on Sunday, but she did not respond. What should I do in this situation? We haven't communicated in over a week, and I am quite perplexed. We have faced more significant challenges than this in the past. This seems like a case of simple miscommunication, so why did it escalate like this? I feel compelled to reach out to her first, but what should I say? I do not want to lose my friend, especially since we are supposed to embark on this program together, and I want to ensure it remains a positive experience for both of us. How should I approach this? Please assist me. Am I in the wrong? How do I remedy this situation if so? Story 4. I, 26F, think I need to break up with my GF, 27F, of 2.5 years due to financial irresponsibility more. This message serves more as a plea for validation than anything else, but I genuinely require some guidance. I will attempt to keep this brief while focusing on the most significant issues, although I apologize in advance if it turns out to be lengthy. I met my girlfriend nearly 3 years ago, and for a considerable period, our relationship was exceptional, as often happens in the beginning. She held 2 jobs, managing social media and data entry for my mother's business in addition to a part-time retail position. She comes from a wealthy background, as her mother owns 2 homes, both valued at over $1 million, yet her personal earnings were quite typical. About a year into our relationship, she received an $800,000 condominium. There were no loans or mortgages, only a homeowners association fee that her roommate covers as rent. Following her acquisition of the condo, she only worked for her mother, which was acceptable since her financial responsibilities consisted mainly of groceries, some utility bills, and her car payments. She earns approximately $20 per hour, but has the flexibility to choose between full-time and part-time hours. After a year, I noticed that she had no savings, which alarmed me considering she didn't have to pay for housing and earned around the same amount as I did. Occasionally, she would express her financial worries to me regarding unexpected expenses like needing new tires or receiving a high electric bill. I tried to provide her with both emotional and practical support, but I did not want to scrutinize her finances excessively. Eventually, I discovered that she was approximately $10,000 in credit card debt and paying around $400 a month for her car, which is a Lexus. I was genuinely concerned, as her income and spending habits made it difficult for her to pay off her debts. I encouraged her to discuss her situation with her mother, which she eventually did. Her mother paid off both of her credit cards and closed one of them. I felt a surge of happiness, believing this would mark a new beginning for her. A year ago, I became a flight attendant for a prominent United States airline. The initial year is undoubtedly challenging, as the pay is not substantial given the hours I work, but I enjoy my job immensely. I put in tremendous effort, spending an average of 100 hours in the air each month. I typically have 12 full days off each month, and each time I visited her, the circumstances seemed to worsen. Her apartment was and remains in a filthy condition, and the same goes for her car. She has grappled with mental health challenges, as have I, and we communicate openly about it. She takes medication and previously saw a therapist, but is currently not in treatment. I have urged her to clean and have attempted to assist her on numerous occasions, but each time we make progress, it seems to deteriorate again. The last time I entered her car, the stench was so overwhelming that I nearly gagged, and she found it offensive. I assumed she was working remotely while I was away, but I later learned she has been declining additional hours and opportunities from her mother to earn more money simply because she does not want to do so. She refuses to seek employment outside of her family. I found out that she had accumulated debt on her credit card again, amounting to around $6,000. She frequently orders meals through food delivery services because she does not want to clean the pans afterward and becomes upset about it. I cannot begin to estimate how much she spends, as these are not inexpensive meals. I truly dislike being in her apartment because it is so dirty. As a flight attendant, my job permits us to fly almost anywhere for free. We traveled to Amsterdam, where the round-trip cost amounted to just $80 in taxes. She is currently in Japan with a friend and paid nothing for her 13-hour flight there. She consistently promises to reimburse me for hotel accommodations during these trips, but she either does not fully pay me back or it takes an excessively long time. She has also done this to my roommate, which was quite embarrassing. She often claims she can afford something upfront because she is eager to travel, only to later find herself either unable to participate in activities due to a lack of funds or reliant on someone else to cover her expenses, and we constantly have to remind her for repayment. I have essentially provided her with free access to the world, and I feel disrespected. Whenever I express these feelings, she has emotional outbursts. Here comes the real kicker for me: Christmas. We always exchange lists of gift ideas, and I prefer practical gifts such as items for my apartment. I purchased everything on her list and more. I included some furniture pieces, but I mainly wanted a full-length mirror that is currently available online for $50. It is now February 22, and I still have not received a single gift. A few days ago, I reminded her that she had not given me a Christmas present, and she replied that she knew she was getting me a mirror. Now, regarding Valentine's Day. I anticipated working on the 14th, so we spent 3 days together beforehand. I took her out to dinner, assuming we would split the bill since this was not meant to be the central Valentine's dinner. After a few drinks and appetizers, she suggested that we make it our Valentine's dinner, and I agreed, so we ordered main courses as well. When the bill arrived, the waiter asked if we were paying together or separately, and she immediately declared we should pay together and thanked me for Valentine's Day. I was taken aback. The bill was around $120, which is substantial for me, but I accepted it because it was a holiday. I was merely surprised that she proposed to go all out and then put the bill in front of me. I worked all day on Valentine's Day, but the next day I had a long layover in Miami, 22 hours. I explicitly asked her what she planned to do for me for Valentine's Day because I would genuinely appreciate it if she could possibly send me a small gift. I would provide her with the hotel information. I received nothing, not even a coffee, flowers, or anything. At this point, I felt utterly distraught. 2 days later, she flew to Tokyo. I inquired about the Valentine's gift, and she mentioned she would purchase something for me while there. So far, she has only shown me some trinkets from the vending machines, which I find enjoyable but do not compare to what I have spent on her and the lifestyle she is leading due to my job. I realize the answer to this situation may be obvious. The difficulty lies in the fact that she deeply loves me. When we are together, we share a wonderful time. She adores me and would never leave me, which is somewhat concerning. I would never intentionally hurt her, but I believe she would remain with me even if I did. She loves me, but it feels more like a child's love, which is insufficient to support a lifelong relationship. She speaks about marriage and has told my friends that she intends to propose this year. She has no money, no plans, and only debt, despite my constant encouragement. I do love her dearly. I love her so profoundly that I find it difficult to articulate all the positive aspects without becoming emotional. I don't want this situation, but my compassion and empathy are fading. I am unsure how to initiate the conversation. How do I break someone's heart? Talk to you later. My partner has no money or goals, and I feel guilty about the prospect of breaking her heart. Story 5. AO resigned from the company, and they sent an employee to my home. I hope to be as explicit as possible without disclosing any personal information. I apologize if the title of this post was not sufficiently precise. I will clarify below. I am currently in the process of transitioning to a job in my ideal career field, which comes with a significant salary increase. As a result, I submitted my 2-week notice to my current, I suppose it should be termed as my previous employer, who has formally accepted my resignation. My current employer operates as a dispatch company, assigning me to work for businesses that contract them, as well as for workers like myself. I have been employed by this firm for several years, gradually enhancing my life, education, and overall standing until I could secure my dream position. It is safe to say that everyone around me, including my new employer, considers my present role to be beneath my qualifications, and they have openly expressed this in both verbal and written form. I am considerably overqualified, and I will admit that the work became oppressively mundane for me and was unrelated to my desired career trajectory. However, I would never criticize those who choose to remain in this position or those who have no choice but to work it due to life circumstances. I was in that situation once, and to each their own. After submitting my notice, I was asked to extend my stay beyond the 2 weeks. I respectfully declined but did agree to stay 2 additional days to see a project through to completion. In retrospect, this was a significant mistake. It is wise never to give companies any leeway. When you can see the end approaching, each remaining day can feel unbearably tedious, more so than before if that is even possible. During the first week of my final 2 weeks, I fell ill. I reported this through the appropriate channels and took a day off. I am not using any vacation days, as I have already exhausted them, and I informed my employer that I would return the following day via email in accordance with their requests. However, my employer continued to call and message my personal phone throughout the day, which I found to be bothersome, pressuring, controlling, and invasive. It is a large corporation where I am not adequately compensated, minimum wage, to be subjected to such harassment, and I had hoped that my email response per their guidelines would suffice. Regrettably, I needed to take the following day off as well, due to my illness and the necessity of obtaining and filing documentation for my new job, which could only be accomplished on weekdays. I genuinely acknowledge the inconvenience my absences may cause my colleagues at the business I am assigned to, but at this point, I'm moving forward, and there is nothing else I can do. There is a cutoff time late in the day for me to notify them whether I will return the next day, yet I still received numerous phone calls and text messages, all of which I ignored, requesting a response, despite my clear indication in my absentee notification email that I needed some space and time. I was very explicit in these emails, writing multiple paragraphs, not just sentences about not only my illness, but also that I was visiting the doctor and preparing my documents for my new job. Perhaps I was being too transparent, but since I am leaving, my hope is that they can inform the business of my situation so they understand that I am not simply abandoning them at the end of my tenure. Because my employer did not consider my email responses to be sufficient proof of my intention to return the next day. They used to, but with my multiple consecutive absences, I can see why this time they did not. They continued to call me and arranged cover for me at the business, essentially allowing me to take the next couple of days off leading to the end of the week. I could have worked some of those days, as I was feeling better, but the relentless text messages and phone calls, along with their selective acknowledgement of which of my emails they chose to heed, soured my desire to make my final days at the business I am assigned to positive. Consequently, I was content to take the time off, emailing in as I should have, of course. This all led to today, the last day of the working week. I again emailed in, despite their likely assumption of my absence today, clearly stating that I would be able to return first thing the following week, my final week. Since I was taking the day off again, I politely informed my employer that I was feeling better, which was true, as I had visited the doctor and received medication, and that I would be attending to matters at the tax office and other paperwork related to my new job. I requested that they refrain from calling me, as I would be busy, but indicated that I could be easily reached via email. I received an email confirming my absence, followed by a barrage of calls and text messages immediately and throughout the day. After finally returning home after working hours, owing to the bureaucratic nature of retrieving paperwork that required extensive travel, I was still called multiple times and found it unbearable to listen to them speak without any apparent reason, especially as I was so close to leaving. Then it occurred. I received an email from my employer stating that they would conduct a wellness check on me within 2 hours. This was not the police, but an internal check. They intended to send someone from higher management, whom I had never met, to my residence. I felt violated and extremely angry that my company would visit my home out of working hours, the very apartment I had worked for years to afford, and that they could decide to do this on a whim. They could not genuinely believe I was in distress, as I had been sending them detailed emails daily, and I had only had reasons to feel positive lately due to my new job. I promptly emailed them back, expressing my disapproval of this action and requesting a boundary between my personal life and work, politely communicated, of course. Afterward, I left to pick up my partner from work. To my understanding, my request was disregarded, as I was later informed that someone knocked on my door while I was out. I am left wondering if I am in the wrong here. I realize my absences are inconvenient, as well as my decision to ignore their calls, but they should be able to read the situation. I clearly do not want any further communication beyond what is necessary during these final 2 weeks, and I simply wish to leave the job that even the managers believe I am too qualified for. I am left with an uncomfortable feeling knowing that the company I dislike intruded upon my personal space, which has caused me to doubt my ability to finish the next week. I could ask a close colleague to collect my personal belongings, but I wish to avoid damaging my relationship with my assigned business, even though it is strained by now. I simply cannot shake the concern that they have my address, and that the next week will be filled with unnecessary attempts at contact before I depart, while I try to refrain from expressing my true anger at them to maintain semi-good terms. Fortunately, my new employer does not view my previous one as reputable, so there is little risk of them relaying negative opinions about me at this point. I welcome your thoughts. Edit. I appreciate everyone's feedback. It was refreshing to wake up and see that others agree with my perspective on the situation. I will continue to be cordial with them since I am leaving in 1 week and will maintain limited communication moving forward, as they are clearly overstepping their boundaries. Story 6. My girlfriend, 18F, broke up with me 19F, saying she's tired of our relationship, but I found out the real truth and need some answers/advice. Essentially, my girlfriend, 18, and I, 19, female, ended our relationship last month, and I am at a loss for what to do now. My thoughts are chaotic, and I feel emotionally exposed. The situation began on a night when everything appeared fine. We were simply conversing, but I noticed that she was taking an unusually long time to respond to my messages. When I checked her Facebook profile, I discovered that she was engaged in conversations with her friends. I also learned that they had recently gone out drinking without informing me. This discovery led to an argument between us. That evening, I deleted my social media profiles and went silent. However, merely an hour later, as I was scrolling through TikTok, she unexpectedly sent me a message there, asking for a breakup. I was baffled. Why was she choosing to end things with me when I had been accommodating her every request? She had previously told me that instead of becoming angry with her, I should inquire first before making assumptions. So I took that advice to heart. I altered nearly every aspect of myself for her. I even bought her gifts, even though she often expressed frustration over my spending. Yet that is my love language, gift giving. She never requested anything, but I offered her things as a way to express my love, especially since we were maintaining a long-distance relationship. Then, out of the blue, she decided to end our relationship, stating that she was tired of it and labeling me as toxic. All I ever wanted was for her to reciprocate my affection, even in small amounts. I felt envious because she had no issues showcasing her outings with friends on social media, while regarding me, her own girlfriend, I had to ask her to feature me, which would annoy her each time I mentioned it. She would post about her friends without hesitation, but when it came to me, she always hesitated. Additionally, I noticed she had a childhood friend whom she referred to as Lab. When I confronted her about this, she became angry and insisted it was normal for her and her friends, accusing me of overreacting. She stated that she had always interacted with her friends in this manner, even before our relationship began. I chose to overlook it, despite being hurt. I had previously survived a relationship that had left me devastated. My ex-boyfriend was in a relationship the entire time we were together. I unwittingly became the other woman. I even lost my virginity to him, and once I uncovered the truth, I was heartbroken. Since then, I have lived in fear of men. My girlfriend was aware of everything. She witnessed my struggles and was instrumental in pulling me out of the depression that had overwhelmed me. When I confessed my feelings for her, she assured me she would never betray me, fully understanding the pain of being cheated on, as her ex-girlfriend had treated her similarly. Yet, during our relationship, she continued to communicate with that same ex. When I questioned her about it, she insisted they had a healthy breakup, so they remained friends. For me, this was unsettling. Each time we argued, I would bring it up, until one day she finally ceased communication with her ex. Returning to the breakup, she declared our relationship toxic just as things appeared to be improving. I believed she recognized my efforts to change, but she said there had been no progress and that she felt drained. She expressed the need for solitude to grow, stating she was too reliant on those around her. I disagreed and insisted that I thought we were okay and that we wouldn't abandon one another. I believed we were in this together for the long haul. She claimed she would return, but deep down, I already suspected she wouldn't. I was distraught. I pleaded with her to reconsider, but she remained firm in her decision, stating she was uncertain and still contemplating it. One day, I noticed an increase in her TikTok followers. She enjoyed participating in random TikTok live sessions, so I decided to listen to one. They were speaking in Bisaya, but I grasped a bit of it. Then I heard her inform the host someone she had recently met in college that she liked someone else. Upon hearing that, my hands and feet turned cold, and I started to sweat. Nevertheless, I sent her a message on Messenger to confront her. Initially, she asked, "If I tell you I like someone else, will you finally stop?" I replied yes. It was then she admitted she had feelings for another person. That revelation caused me to completely break down. I had been internalizing blame for everything, assuming I was the issue. I thought it was my fault, just as she had suggested. She repeatedly stated I was stubborn for resisting a breakup when she first suggested it. Then she remarked, "If you had just agreed to end things back then, we wouldn't be in this situation." I wept profusely that night. I even reached out to her childhood friend, the one I felt jealous of, to seek the truth because I was consumed by confusion. That's when I discovered that my ex had actually betrayed me. That moment shattered my entire world. I could no longer think clearly, and in my anguish, I vented my feelings on my anonymous Facebook account. She subsequently messaged me on Instagram, questioning why I chose to expose her. She labeled me as immature and asked, "Is that how a college student thinks?" She even suggested that if I had remained silent, there might have still been hope for us to reconcile. Then she claimed she had only behaved in that manner because she wanted to leave me, which was perplexing since I had been pleading for her to stay. I spent several days unable to sleep or eat properly. I just kept crying. I couldn't focus on my classes. I would sit there, staring into space. I constantly told myself I did not deserve love. It felt incredibly unfair that she had already moved on while I was left in anguish. I even began to loathe myself. The emotional turmoil became so intense that I resorted to harming my arms. My stomach churned, as if I wanted to vomit, but I had eaten nothing all day, and so there was nothing to expel. I continued crying. A few of my friends grew concerned. They advised me to move on, insisting my ex would not return. However, I am unsure how to begin anew. I am genuinely struggling with myself and do not know what steps to take next.